So we've probably agreed on everything we've talked about so far,
Yeah.
but it can't last
Okay.
forever.
Okay.
So let's talk about growth relative to infrastructure. Um, the Taylor, for example, I'm not a fan. The traffic was already bad there in front of the police station. You add what, 300 units there. There's no additional. I
Yeah.
mean, there's entrance and exit sort of lanes, but not really a greater road infrastructure there. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong. That thing passed. The rezoning passed 3-2,
Hmm.
and you were one of the
Yes, sir.
three. So I guess I'm wondering, do we always have to have infrastructure lag growth, or can we think ahead and do these things in advance, or
Yeah.
are people like me and others just doomed to suffer through traffic so developers can make a lot of money?
Yeah. Well, to kind of give you a little bit of behind the scenes, because everyone deserves to know it. Um, October, I think this might have been 2022. The Councilman George Allen and I sat down with John Marsh. And he gave us, told us what he wanted to talk about and kind of gave us the idea of it. And I had two concerns. I told him straight out. I was like, I see two issues with this. One is 10th Street. The second is community involvement. If you do not get the community involved in this, they are going to be livid. And I can only do that and give those warnings as what I know,
Mm.
And whenever they went through the process and they came to it, I didn't see any community involvement. I didn't see any, fix or, focus on how we're going to do 10th Street. I'm also not an engineer, and I understand and appreciate that. But when it does come before our desk, then on city council, then that is where it becomes my purview. And so I held out for a while. There were three things that I was concerned with. The first thing, exactly what you're talking about, was 10th Street. The second thing was the infrastructure for sewer, water, everything within that area. And the third part of it was people were unhappy with the way that it looked.
Now, in fairness, I'll say it looks better in real life than it did in the
Right,
pictures.
right. You're right. And with that, I knew that there were going to be two sides of this. Three. Either they weren't going to change it at all, they were going to change it to make it better, or they were going to change it to make it worse. And it seemed like they went to making it worse because it would just seem like a very plain white
Mm.
building. And you're right, it does look beautiful. But with the other two, I can't do anything with the aesthetics, right? That's not really our side of what we can do from council. And we have to look at the legal side of it. What are the legal ramifications of trying to keep a development like this from coming in when they have all right from zoning and all this? This was also kind of done backwards. So when we were looking about this, it was usually the rezoning happens and then the development further goes on. But they kind of front loaded it with, hey, this development's coming and then the rezoning. So everything was contentious in that rezoning part. Everything that's where it all held at, was the rezoning of this. Because once they do that, they can build it.
Right.
So we were trying to, thread that needle between what our job is in the government and democracy, what we can provide. So I focused on the two things, and that's traffic. And the other side was the infrastructure. I asked the city, can you provide us with an idea of what this road is going to look like? I asked for an additional lane in there. We weren't given anything. We weren't given any new information. We weren't given any new drawings. We just got this black and white kind of, you know, road thing and a picture, and that was it. On the infrastructure, we were told that it was tested and it was going forward and everything. As a council member, you don't have the ability to go back in time. But I'm clear with my constituents. I am I I was sitting in a meeting and I overheard someone telling another person about the process and how the reservations that we had weren't valid, and the information that we were given, they didn't do anything extra to suffice any of our words. That's first person. That's me sitting there
Mm.
listening to this happen. And I felt duped. I felt like we weren't given, the people weren't given everything. we're not allowed to go back and, go back and change anything or
Right.
anything like that. But it does hurt because I'm like, that's the way we make our decisions. We need everything there, and we weren't given very much. It was very pushed by the mayor. The mayor was
Mm.
very much for the Taylor. That's very well known. So that makes it even harder because everything gets kind of thrown into this, and it seemed like I was in the middle because there were two against and there were two for, and that's why I was trying to ask all these questions to get a lot in there. But it is a beautiful project, with everything that was going on. There were lots of meetings. We were trying to figure out how long does John Marsh have control of the property. He was saying 30 years, but people are saying once you sell it, he's out. And I wasn't given a straight answer by
Mm.
him, and it took some time. And after a meeting, I was like, you got to shoot me straight. I need to tell my people something. But it all came from a lot of what was going on in other wards. I talked to a lot of Ward 5 people about it, and we had some for and some against. I have one constituent, I knocked on her door, and she said, that's the only thing we disagree on. And I said, I understand that. I appreciate it. But, we had meetings, and we had talked about this, and everything that we did trying to get the information out there was the best thing that we could do. But we also, have a thriving downtown, and we need walkable distance. And it came into how
Right.
many apartment spaces and how much need is there. And it's hard to say, okay, we have this many people, we're growing by this much, and these apartments are going to be left open. And I've seen it in other communities. When I worked in intelligence as a civilian in Huntsville, they were expecting a BRAC to happen and a change of, one of the commands to come to Huntsville. And it was slow trickle. They didn't know that they'd been trickling in for 10 years. They thought it was going to be overnight. So I know these worries can happen. And I talked heavily with Councilman George Allen. That was his ward, relying on a lot of how comfortable he felt with it. But also, we are a community of ideas and growth. And there are opportunities that come with this that we just don't know yet.
Mm.
I don't regret. I can't regret anything, but I regret how it happened and the information. I wish I would have pushed more.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're sitting in a meeting and you have these experts telling you that this, and this, and you're just looking at a black and white piece of paper, what else can you ask for, right? I mean, it's partially there. There weren't given any development drawing. Sure enough, not what the outside looked like and the idea of it. We could have been given that with the road. And I do worry about that because the number one complaint I get from older constituents in Opelika is 2nd Avenue. So because we can't grow out there, we can't expand very much because it's pretty narrow. So my biggest fear was creating a second one. So I talked to a lot of people, and how do you take your kids to school? If you're going through that area, are you mitigating that by going down other roads? Are you going down McCoy?
Right.
How are you doing this? And it seemed like a lot of hit or miss, and not knowing we don't know what we don't know. And for the benefit of what it brings in our community, we were just trying to wrestle that. But that's what this job is.
Mm.
It's, if this could be handled on any other level, it would be. It wouldn't come to us, but that's what we're tasked with, is having trust from our constituents that we're doing the research, we're asking the questions, we're going to the meetings, and being as impartial as we can, but as informative as we can. So I agree, and I take that was a hard one. I've had people come up and talk to me in public about it, and I, I'm a little hurt. It's still it's a sore subject for me, because some of the people are like, I'm very appreciative, and those are developers, investors in Opelika, and I understand, but they are not seeing it from the lens that we are of the people. And that's what most matters, because on page 19 of the budget, it has the chain of command for the city of Opelika, and there is no one above the people. The people are above the mayor. They're above us. They are the top of the list. So when you know that you felt like you've let some people down, and but others are happy.
Mm,
It's not something that we go around skipping the streets talking
right.
about.
Um, it'll be interesting to see what happens because my sense is there's not occupancy is not that high at the moment. But if it does get full someday, it'll be
Yeah,
really interesting to see what happens with that road.
yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's something that's, I think, is on all of our radars, and our city does a great job with a lot of the management and the needs of it. But the problem is the immediacy of it. I mean, we can plan out, and well, if this does get bad, and we can do this, and there has been a lot of work that's been done in that area, but you can't negate the fact that it bottlenecks,
Mm,
and that you've got businesses sitting next to sidewalks
right,
or another piece of property, and you're going to have to ask for a lot of permission to make any type of changes in that area, and that's tough.
right. Now the flip side, as you noted, I think the guy's name's Jody who owns Chuck's Barbecue. If I'm him, I'm thrilled, right? There's hundreds of potential customers now are 25 steps from my restaurant.
I hope I know that it affects those businesses the most, with just the traffic
Mm,
flow and everything. For me, I'm kind of, when you said that, kind of looking at me like I I don't know how to feel about it, because I know that it was so contentious, and
mm,
I really feel that if there would have been just a little bit of participation from the community, getting it out there and just doing some of that, I feel like we would probably have more advocates. But when it pops up on you overnight, like this was just put on Facebook,
mm.
and then there was a
It was a
just
lynch mob.
it was, and it was about 2-3 months after we had had our meeting in October. And when no news is good news, I guess. And then when that popped up, I just kind of shook my head, and I thought, oh boy, like this is exactly what I was worried about. And the people are worried exactly what I thought they would be worried about,
Hmm.
which you can't blame them. I mean, this is who we do this for, you know, everyone here together. And I felt like people just didn't feel like they had a choice in the matter. And it's something that I carry with me, but it's also the experience of going through that I know what to ask. I know
Hmm.
what to, and this is all a part of that. Elections are comprehensive.